Hey everyone. So I wanted to do a more thorough in-depth review on my John Deere 1585 terrain cut. I got a request to do a little bit more, provide a little bit more information on this. I've had some snow plowing videos and some broom videos with this thing. And now that it's summertime, I want to show it the mowing part, because I think most people, when they look at these things, are going to look at them for mowing. I intentionally am showing it to you right now dirty. So in this video, I want to talk to you about my love-hate relationship with this mower and this machine in general. I really like a lot of things about it. And then there's certain things that I don't like. And one of the biggest things I don't like is when you mow with this thing, it gets filthy. And I have the rear discharge mower deck on it. And that's a consideration that you're going to want to think about if you're going to purchase one of these things, on whether you go with the rear discharge or a side. I have a feeling the side discharge would be a lot cleaner, but I don't know. So if you have one and you can share information, please provide that and comment or something below. But I want to get under here and show you sort of the rear discharge. There's this black mat, you can see it's resting on the ground right now. Normally it has hooks that hook it up underneath here. It's supposed to block a lot of this debris, but really all it does is it just traps grass. So what had happened was the hooks came off, and when I was reversing with this thing, the way this is designed, this metal bar with these big hooks was able to go underneath the mower deck and get hit by the blades. And so the blades hit this metal piece and destroyed it. So what I did is I just left that black mat down. It just floats over the ground. So it kind of knocks some things down a little bit, but it doesn't trap anything. It's not ideal, but I got so sick of cleaning out this area under here that I just thought, I'm just going to leave this down. So just, when you take a look at this, this is how it looks dirty. One other thing I really don't like that's related to how dirty this thing gets is you can see they have these nice screens where the air is sucked through the radiator. But, so I also have a video on my Case 75C tractor. Over its radiators, it has these little removable screens that you can clean. John Deere really needs to take note of that and what Case does, because this thing gets caked. This screen is not adequate to keep these radiators from plugging up. And the second thing here is about the radiators. There's a lot of them. So when you pull this one out, you now have a little middle one here too. And then this one flips open and also pulls out. And then it doesn't pull out very far though. And so you can see it's hard to get down in there. I'll show you how I clean this in a second, because I'm going to take it over and clean. But you just spray it out with a hose, and that does a pretty good job. The battery on this thing it sits on the right side of the machine, and it's under a panel. And I really didn't like how hard it was to take the panel on and off. So I just took the panel off and left it off, because if you're like me and you like to put battery tenders and things and have access to your battery if you need to jump it or whatever, I just found this easier. Now, I could just put one of those wire like pigtails and make this thing look nicer, but I just haven't done that yet. But I think, making the battery a little bit more accessible would have been nice. So here's how you get to the air filter. I'm gonna turn these things up and open them up. These are really long screws, and it's pretty annoying to do this. They're just little things like this on this mower. For as expensive as it is, this thing is not cheap. So there I can bend back the pan a little bit and clean off some of this on the screen. But to get to the air filter, I have to take off even more. And what I don't understand about the way they did this is they give you these thumb screws on one side, but then there's star bit screws on the other side. So, you have to have a tool to get the whole thing off. But why did they just not do thumb screws on the whole thing? Little stuff like this is all over this machine, where you kind of feel like this is a premium machine. It's got an awesome motor, it's got awesome power, it's got all-wheel drive, all these really cool things, but then there's all these shortcuts, I feel like, that they did to, I don't know, are just maybe not very well thought out. So I'm going to go through all those in detail. You come to this side, this panel has, you know, now instead of star bits, it has Allen key bits. So, you know, there's just inconsistency through a lot of this machine. If you've been doing any sort of research on this machine, you'll see videos on YouTube and you'll hear things on forums or read things on forums about how dirty the cab gets. And I just want to show you how dirty this cab gets. And this to me is probably the biggest downside of this machine. And you really don't know about it until you do mowing in very dry conditions or dusty conditions. So if you have very dry and dusty conditions, I'm in Wisconsin, it's usually not that bad here. I mowed down a hay field and I was left with this mess, and it was so bad in the cab. Thankfully, you know, COVID's going on and everyone has access to these little masks. So I had to put one of these on while I was mowing. This is the first time I've had to do that. But like, this hay chaff just gets everywhere. I mean, it's all over this thing. It's kind of difficult to clean this thing out. So, you know, you really have to blow this stuff out because it's, or vacuum it or something. So I need to do that still. But you can see it just, even the interior air filter gets now all gummed up because of it. And like, if you look down through the pedals, you can see outside. There's no like good air seal with the pedals that go through the floor. They basically go right underneath the front of the mower here, and there's no rubber seal or anything that keeps that dust out. So that's the biggest problem with this thing, is it does not do a good job of keeping the cab nice and clean. And with my other cab tractor, my K75C, that thing, I just baled 15 acres of hay with it and cut and raked and did all that stuff, and there's hardly any dust in the cab. So huge difference. And you'd think that would be something in this price range that you would think that John Deere would do a better job at controlling the dust in the cab, especially for a lawnmower. I mean, this is sort of what they do. Another weird thing, on the right side door, there's no like pneumatic or gas cylinder to hold this thing open. So when you open it, it falls back shut. And I find this pretty annoying, because when you're trying to work on this thing or clean it out and you want to hold this door open, it doesn't hold open unless you're holding it. So the seat that comes with this thing is pretty good. It's an air ride seat, and you know, you pump it up and it works pretty well. There's a lot of adjustments. You can slide it forward and backwards. The armrests adjust up and down with these little turn knobs underneath, and so that raises them up and down. Now they turn a little too easy, so they'll drift down as you mow because of the bouncing. Sort of loosens it up on its own. Otherwise, it's a pretty nice ergonomic cab. So you have plenty of leg room. The steering wheel column tilts in and out, so you can give yourself a lot of room. You know, if you're a bigger person or you have long legs or something. The air conditioning controls are all located up on the ceiling. And in fact, the whole air conditioner is kind of a contained unit up top. It has a filter in the back here that you use these thumb screws to take off to clean that out. Okay, so looking at how the foot pedals work on this thing, starting on the left over here, that's your left wheel, front wheel brake, and then your right wheel brake. So those are if you want to do like real tight turns and you don't want to tear up the lawn, because if you do a tight turn, the inside wheel will turn at the same revolutions per minute as the outside wheel. And so you can use those brakes to keep that from happening and to slow one side down. And it takes a little practice to get the hang of that. I don't really use it because I just kind of do, instead of doing real tight turns, I do more of like a Y turn and then a reverse. I find that works better anyway. So I barely ever use the brake pedals over here to independently brake the wheels. Over here, the parking brake is the tall one there, and then there's a forward backward pedal, and it's all hydro driven, so that's really nice. Even my daughter, who's 7, can drive this thing without a problem. I do like how easy this thing is to drive, and it's pretty intuitive from a control perspective. So to raise the mower deck up and down, or your broom or whatever your attachment is, it's this first lever, and then there's 2 hydraulic remotes on the front, 2 hookups, so you can have 2 different ranges of motion on your attachments, or 2 different functions. So that's pretty cool to have 2 extra functions, because you know, on a skid steer you usually only get 1. So that, if you're handy and you can make some neat attachments, you have a lot of flexibility with this to do 2 things at once, like a tilt and turn, or you know, whatever. So that I really like. And then over here there's your 4-wheel drive stick, and what this does is all the way forward is always on 4-wheel drive. In the middle is automatic 4-wheel drive, which means it'll kick in the back wheels when the front wheels slip. And then the furthest back, if you pull the lever, is just front wheel drive. And since I have hills, I always put it up in full 4-wheel drive all the time. And the reason for that is the automatic 4-wheel drive, I found it doesn't really work that well. And if you start slipping, then the back wheels kind of kick in weird and you can lose control on a hillside or something. So I find it's best, and it saves the lawn the most, if you just leave it in full all-wheel drive all the time. And you don't like tear up and have spin outs as much. This one, I feel like it's not quite refined enough. When it kicks in, it sort of makes a bigger mess of your yard than it would if you just leave it in all wheel all the time. The travel speed lever here is, you have a neutral and your slow and your rabbit setting, where if you're transporting between places, the rabbit setting is what you'll use. For mowing, it's almost always in the turtle setting for me, because it still goes pretty fast at the low setting here. And then you have your lights, where you have flashing lights, you have work lights, parking lights, things like that. And you do have a windshield wiper. There are signal indicators right here. It's kind of a weird location for them, but to do your right turn, you flip it that way, and your left turn this way. I'm not exactly sure why they didn't put that up here on the steering wheel stack, because that's usually where you would expect an indicator to be located. So I hardly ever use these, because it's like your brain doesn't remember it usually when you're driving. So, and I don't have to use them very often. And then on the steering stack, you have your throttle, your RPM setting, and your lights. So your headlights are on this one. It's a little strange that you have headlights here, and then you have other lights over here. Not real sure why they didn't kind of keep them all together. On the inside, you just have 6 different vents that you can use, and they're all up high. I picked today to do a mowing test and to do a video because it's hot. It's going to be 90 degrees. And so this thing, because it's leaky with air, you can see even on this side too, you can see through to the daylight. In here, and just stuff sprays out from, like, you'll see the chaff from the grass sprays up through these holes here. Outside of that, it's a pretty good seal around the cab with these windows and things like that. But on a hot day, the engine is right below you. So this tractor, I would say, if you have real hot temperatures, it's probably not going to be the best, most comfortable cab, but it does the job. I mean, it still functions. It's better than mowing out in the open. So, I mean, take a look I haven't cleaned this out, but look at how dirty this gets. And this is the engine bay under here. So you're sitting on top of the engine and you're getting heat and everything coming in here. So there's really not a lot of insulation between the engine and yourself. There's just this metal plate, which metal is not a good resistor of heat. It actually just wicks it right into the cab. There is some foam on this mat here to try to quell that a little bit, but yeah. And then you can see there's another big hole here. That's a finger hole for pulling this panel up, but that's also where other dust comes in. The other complaint I have about the mower deck and everything is it's not easy to get these black cover panels off to clean out underneath. You have a lot of bolts all around. In the front there's thumb screws, but in the back there are just regular bolts there that you would need a ratchet or wrench to get them off. So again, I wish they would do things more consistently where you could kind of take these off without having to get a tool out. The last thing before I take it over to clean I want to just show is something required with this cab in particular. There is really no soundproofing between the engine and you, and this thing is very loud. So you should totally wear ear protection if you want to keep your hearing. Don't think you're going to be jamming out to a radio or something in here. Get a pair of ear protectors that have a radio built in like these. Good thing it's hot because you always get wet when you do this. So the hardest thing to clean is the front part underneath where the engine is. So yeah, this area is the hardest to clean, and it just, you know, even when this black mat is up covering this, it actually makes the situation worse because grass just accumulates inside the mat and gets all around the engine. So the way you have to clean this, I mean, you have to hose it, but you really have to get your hands in here and pull all this grass out of here. So, you know, I've got a 0 turn that is made by John Deere. It's the 997, and you don't have to deal with any of this kind of garbage cleaning out this. And this is, you know, after one mow. So like, if you don't like cleaning your mower, you don't want to keep them clean, then this probably isn't the best mower for you. Hey, my last big complaint, I've done a whole video on this, is just how hard it is to switch attachments on this machine. The mower deck is the heaviest, hardest attachment to change, and to take on and or to take off and put on. And the main reason is it's got these square tubes, and the square tubes barely fit inside those square holes where the hitch arms are, and you have to get it darn near perfect. And if you don't have a flat concrete pad to put your mower on when you do this, it's gonna be almost impossible, because pushing this thing around by yourself, if you have help, that's a different story, but pushing around by yourself is very, very difficult. Some things I've learned that help you are, if you need to move the deck, you know, pushing on these rollers, like rolling the wheel, is a lot easier on your back than trying to muscle it. I have thrown my back out on this thing, just trying to push it on to mount it. This and the cab being dirty and the machine getting dirty are the two biggest cons of this machine. And for this price point, they should absolutely not be this bad. It should not be this hard to change the attachment, and the cab should not be that dusty, and the machine should not get this dirty underneath. I took the engine bay shaft or cover off to thing you normally use to access the PTO shaft and everything, to clean this out so you can kind of see what lies beneath all this junk. This is from mowing one field. There's a lot of mowing, about a 5 acre field, and just all this stuff gets in here in the engine bay and it piles up. And you can see sort of as I clear this out all the critical components that are in here, like the oil dipstick, the oil fill is even in here. So this is just not a good place to have stuff pile up. And again, this does this with that black mat up or down, it doesn't matter. You always get this in here. And it could be the rear discharge mower deck, but I don't know. So if you have a side discharge, I'd love to hear how well it works, because I've been tempted to go buy one, you know, try my luck with that. I will show a lot of the advantages of a rear discharge in this video, so you can see why I picked a rear discharge. I did not have any concept of how dirty it would make this mower though, and had I known that, I probably wouldn't have picked this mower or this deck with this mower, because it's just too hard to keep clean. All right, so I'm gonna try to rinse this out, and the machine will start to show itself. Now, one thing I always worry about is fire with all of this, you know, real dry grass in here. You know, around the engine, it seems like this is a big fire hazard. So it's important, like I said, to keep this thing clean so that you don't have any of those issues. And some of you may be cringing that I got a hose inside the cab, but it all just drains out the bottom here, and there's not a lot to really hurt. The key thing is to make sure your oil dipstick's in and closed nicely, and then that your oil cap is on tight so that you don't get any water in the engine. You know, I kind of wish there was a way to solve this problem, because this would make this machine so much more desirable. And I promise I won't just bash on this machine, because I like to point out the flaws and stuff, because I don't like to give too rosy of a review on things. You know, a lot of people will spend 30 grand on a lawnmower and then make themselves feel justified. They'll give you a really happy review of whatever it is, even if there's a lot of faults. And you know, I think that if I were to do this all again, I would still probably do a front mount machine like this, but I would definitely search around for other manufacturers who make a machine like this one. I love the front mount machines. I love them, and I think they're so versatile. They're great mowers. They're great trail mowers. They're great for plowing snow, brooming off leaves off your driveway. There's so many things you can do with these types of mowers, and they seem expensive, but when you start to add up all the other stuff you need, if you have like a zero turn mower, because you can't really plow snow with a zero turn, it's hard. You can't really mow in tough areas with a zero turn, because you can't lift the deck over a certain amount. It's usually about 5 inches is your limit. The other problem is if you have trails, like I do, I'll show you. When you're trail mowing with a zero turn is not fun, because you get smacked. You're sitting out in the front of the lawnmower, and you get smacked the whole time in the face by thorns and honeysuckle and all sorts of stuff. Well, I don't have this whole thing fully cleaned out, but you can see how much better things look now. So I think I'm just going to go from here and go out and mow. I can't handle how dusty it is in here, so I'm going to shop vac it out before I go. So we're going to take this thing out and show what this thing's good at, which is mowing trails and, you know, yards and things like that. So to start the PTO, you just flip this yellow switch here, and you slowly rev it up. I find I work best at like 3/4 to 80% throttle. Make sure your deck's lowered all the way down. And the great part about a rear discharge is you don't have to worry about your side spout on trails. So like this, you know, I don't have to worry about dragging a side spout through the trail, like the side of the trail, and getting hung up on things. The nice thing about a side discharge though is you can kind of throw your clippings where you want to throw them. Take a look behind us here. See the cut? The caster wheels up front have a bunch of different height adjustments using these black plastic washers, and they work pretty well. So the only problem is the pins on the top. You see the one on the left over there is original, and if you mow under like a bush or something, they can get hung up on like a stick or something, and they can come off and come out. And in fact, that's what happened on this right side here when I was mowing through like honeysuckle. The pin got snagged and then came undone and fell out, and then the whole caster wheel fell off. And it went underneath the front of the mower deck, and it chopped the wheel. You can kind of see on that right caster wheel there, I chopped it with the blades. I should probably replace those pins with like actual bolts like I did over on the other side with a cotter pin through, but this one's holding strong. Just be aware if you're mowing into like bushes or something. One great thing is if you're coming into a field like this where you've got long grass that you want to mow down, it could be like briars or raspberries or something, but you don't know what's underneath it. The great thing is you can lift your deck off the ground like this while you mow, go through it, just and kind of keep an eye out for big rocks or stumps or something like that. And if you want, you can come back around to it now, because what it does is allows you to see that, hey, there's a limb underneath there. Maybe I shouldn't mow all the way down, you know. So that's the great thing about these front mounts. The other nice thing is, let's go over here to the edge of like a little ravine or a ditch or something. Oh, and there's the log right there, so I gotta be careful. Yeah, you wouldn't want to do this with any other kind of mower. So this is a steep drop. You can't really see, but I can get right up my deck over the edge of it, and then I can lower the deck down and kind of mow over the side. So I'll do that and I'll back up. And this is really great, like if you want to mow along a pond or, you know, along a steep ditch like this where you don't want to get right up next to it. You can keep all the way to the tractor back away from the ditch. So yeah, I think one of the best things about the front mounts are they're a brush mower and a finish mower all in one. So when you got the deck up, it's a brush mower. When you put the deck down, it becomes your finish mower. The really cool thing about this mower is it's got really big blades, really thick blades on it. So it's not like your typical lawnmower blades. So I'll show you an example of one of like the way you can turn around without doing, you know, the zero turn. This is how I normally turn. I kind of turn it about this sharp, and then I reverse like this. And then you don't leave like a spin mark. That's how easy it is to turn around in this thing. So it's pretty much a zero turn. Okay, now I'm going to show how this thing turns around if I just crank it as hard as I can. You can kind of see there's a little bit of turf damage right there from turning around, but I'm just going to crank it and go try to turn a zero turn. And I'll just keep going, show you kind of how tight this turn is. So you see the inside wheel here spinning more than it's going, like crossing the ground. So what I'm doing is I'm tearing up the grass like that. So if I take this pedal right here, get this wire out of the way, I can break this wheel. And then you can see it doesn't move as much. Won't tear up as much either. So you can see right there's where I just did the brake, and then up there where the dirt is, that's where I didn't do the brake. So the brake saves your grass. So that's what these pedals are for down here. I have learned that this thing, if your radiators get full, it will beep and tell you over here on this display. It tells you like when you need service, hours, things like that, how much fuel you're burning. But it will tell you if you have a clogged radiator and the temperature's building, if the temperature's going up too high in the motor, it'll say stop. You know, it's overheating, and that's usually a sign that your radiators are clogged, so you got to go back there and clean them out. That's where having like a little screen when you're out in the field would be really nice, because that would make it a lot easier to just clean the screen off out in the field than to try to get all those little fins cleaned up. Here's where the front mount pays off. I got this little dock here. I can lift up the deck, go over the dock, even lower it a little bit, back up, and there you go. So now we can make it to that dock all right. That would not be something you could do with a zero turn. And then if I go over here, this is kind of where the geese, we have baby geese around here, and ducks. They like to come in and out right here. So I mow them a little path, and I can go over the edge of the bank and not go in the water. Just keep that nice and mowed for them, so it's a nice landing for them to go in and out of. Here's the family. They're just sitting up here in the shade, waiting for me to mow, I guess. So you kind of have to use the angles in this mower when you go around stuff, because you can't really go super tight. Kind of cut the corner a little bit, and then you go to the next tree here, and then you get the wheel pass, go up to it. That's about as close as you can get with this thing. And do these Y turns. I call them Y turns. I'm not exactly sure what they are, but you kind of go forward, you back, and you turn. And that saves your yard from getting big track marks. So then I just come back on the other side of these trees, and I do the same thing. So you just kind of drive with that wheel pass. Not quite like a zero turn where you just whip around the trees, but with the rear discharge you can trim on both sides. So here's an area like where my kids, I have a zip line set up, so this is sort of the entry. I put like flitches from my sawmill here for like walkways, but you obviously don't want to mow those, so you can pick up the deck here, and I can creep all the way up. And I'm going up a steep hill right now, you can't really tell, But this four-wheel drive is just so nice. So nice to have four-wheel drive in a mower. This lever is in a very convenient spot. It's just naturally right by your right hand rests on it. And so if you see something emergency, you need to pull the deck up, you just pull it back, and then your deck pops up, and then you push it forward, and you're ready to go. After having this mower, I would never go back. In my terrain with hills and with trees and woods and brush and mud and marsh and things like that, I would always have a four-wheel drive lawn mower with the front mount mower deck. And the only thing I think I'd change is probably a side discharge. Okay, so my kids play in this like little pond area. It's been pretty dry lately, so we haven't had a lot of water flowing through it. But normally there's a spring that flows through this thing, and they play around here. There's frogs and stuff. But I kind of like to mow this in a way that puts all the grass clippings away from here, because they're usually barefoot, and then they don't get grass clippings everywhere out on their feet and stuff. So one thing you could do with the rear discharge that's kind of nice is you can mulch a little better. You just have to drive in reverse. So when you drive in reverse, you actually blowing your clippings back underneath, so it acts like a mulch. So if I drive in reverse away from the pond here, I pull all these clippings back, and then I can go forward and pull them back. So this is sort of how you get around the fact that you can't, you know, aim where you want your leaves or where you want your grass clippings to go. You just have to use reverse a lot. And since this is a hydro foot pedal tractor that just has a forward to reverse pedal, it's pretty easy to do. So kind of just, you know, back mow like this. And what it does is it keeps that whole area just free of all the grass clippings you normally get. Driving backwards like this does create more grass clippings that get on your deck though, so you can get underneath in the engine bay, because it just kind of rolls all the clippings backwards with you. So just know that that makes it a little more, makes your machine a little more dirty. So I've been mowing for about an hour now, and it's 90 degrees out. I got my air conditioner on max, and I gotta say it's not too bad in here. It's pretty comfortable. It probably feels like it's maybe the cold air blowing on me. It's probably like the equivalent of sitting in the high 70s, low 80s. So it's not ice cold in here, but it's not terrible. You can feel the warmth from the engine under your seat. So your head and neck and everything are cool because it's blasting on your head and neck, but you know, your legs and lower half are feeling feel the heat. All right, so I got it all cleaned up, and just want to say a few positive things about this mower as well. All in all, I really like this thing. I would totally buy one again. I do have my beefs with it, but you know what? Every machine you have, you're gonna have pros and cons. The biggest things that I like about it are it's real heavy duty, so you don't have to be real ginger with it. It can handle a lot. The motor has been flawless. I haven't had any issues really with anything on it. No mechanical issues in 5 years. Greasable Zerks on the deck. The deck's really heavy duty as well. The metal's real thick. The blades are huge. And yeah, it's really, like I said, it's really hard to do damage. I even ran over that caster wheel and it's still working fine. And it's got lots of power, lots of traction. It does great on hills. It mows well. And again, it does all of those other things that most mowers can't, like broom and snow plow and This can even have a little bucket on the front, or it can have a blade. There's even like a combine harvester for this thing. There's a leaf vac system. There's all sorts of stuff you can do. And because you have these hydraulic remotes on the front, there's only like a 7 gallon per minute flow out of them. But that's plenty for things like a shear. If you want to make a shear, I've made a tree shear for this. I've used a drawbar and my own custom hitch on this to push around a pontoon boat, because this thing's really good at pushing trailers since it's rear wheel steering. You can push things into really tight spaces and maneuver real well with it. And you can see so well from the cab down to the hitch. So it's right in front of you. So it's real easy to hook up. So yeah, and you know, I'm sure there's a million other types of attachments you could build for this thing. So that's one of the best things about this mower is it's well built, it's sturdy, and it's very versatile. You can do so much with it, and I think the resale value is pretty good on them, especially if you don't have tons of hours. If you get one from like a municipality, I think you can get a pretty good deal on high hour machines, and they're usually well taken care of. And these things should last a really long time, thousands and thousands of hours. I think if you're looking at this particular model, you probably won't be disappointed unless you live in a real dusty climate and you're constantly, you know, mowing very dry, long grass and things like that. And if you go with the side discharge, I think you'll probably be happier than if you go with the rear. All right, thanks for watching.